All right, let's get it rolling.
Hi.
Hello.
Take 4,312.
It feels that way sometimes. We've all been transported to worlds beyond our wildest imagination with books. But books are also a great vehicle to get together and exchange ideas. Welcome to Books du Jour. Come and join our authors at the table. Peter James is my next guest in Deadmans Time, and he's going to tell us whether he's done time in the jail or not. Have you ever been in jail, by the way?
I've been many times as a talk. I give talks in prisons.
Oh, you do?
And I find it fascinating because for the
English
reason,
jail, right?
I haven't been in a Supermax American one yet, but I find it fascinating because you get a chance to talk to the prisoners. I was in a women's prison last year, and I get a talk, and there was this one woman in the audience, she was about 55, clearly smarter than the others, asking good questions, and I thought, I wonder what you're here for. And I thought maybe killed somebody drink driving or whatever. Anyway, I managed to get up to her afterwards, and I never say, what are you doing here? So I said, how much longer do you have to go? And she said, I've got 9.5 more bloody years to go, and it's not fair. She said, a woman did the same as me in London, and she's only got 6 more years to go. I said, oh, what did you do? She said, well, I poisoned my mother-in-law, the old bag. I said, really? And the thing was, she went into hospital to die, and the bloody woman didn't die. She went into hospital to die, and I embezzled her bank account. And the bloody woman didn't die. Came out, and I realized she'd find out, so I had to poison her. And then I realized my husband would find out, so I poisoned him too. And it's just not fair. I've got 9.5 more years to go, and a woman did exactly the same as me in London, and she's only got 6 more years to go. And I said to the officer after that, is this for real? And she said, absolutely, sir. Her husband was 3.5 months on life support.
Oh, my God.
And permanently brain damaged, and she's just angry at the length of time she got.
So there's a disconnect between the act and the emotion, yeah?
And one of the things that fascinates me about talking to prisoners is so often how they have that total...
separation.
Yeah. The really dangerous ones, the ones who have no empathy.
Yeah. So what did you write about that? Are you afraid to be separated from your life and your head? Something like that?
I find the criminal mind, the criminal world fascinating. What happened was I'd written a number of novels, and I just got married, and we got burgled. This was 20 years ago. And a young detective came to the house to take fingerprints. And
you live in Brighton, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he saw my novel. It was a psychological thriller. And he said, oh, if you ever want any research with the police, give me a call. And he was married to a detective. And my then wife and I, we became friendly with them. And they'd invite us to a barbecue, to a police social night, to their home. And almost all their friends were also police officers. And I found their world fascinating. Traffic cops, homicide detectives.
Sure.
And I suddenly realized that as a writer, that nobody sees more of human life in a 30-year career than a cop.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's really why I started writing police
But
thrillers.
you could have done medical thrillers. I mean, doctors in ER, they're close to that as well, no?
They see a lot, but they don't see... I mean, a cop will see everything from a sudden infant death. In one day, they could go from a sudden infant death to an old couple who've been defrauded of all their life savings, to a terrible accident, to a homicide, to a domestic fight where... I went to one recently. 7-year-old girl phones the police. Mummy and Daddy are killing each other. And we go to this house, and it's a nice middle-class house, and the father's, half his lip is hanging off, right, and he's got blood pouring out of his nose. His wife's got 2 black eyes and a forehead gashed open. What was it about? In his words, I wanted to barbecue the beef, and the bitch put it in the oven. And they see it all.
But that stands for something bigger, obviously,
Yeah.
right? Okay. But so you're intrigued by that type of scenario.
Yeah, I'm fascinated as a writer by what makes people tick. And when I created my detective, Roy Grace, who is based on somebody who's become a very close friend, who is a senior detective, homicide detective, in
we
my
have
native
to
brain.
tell our audience this is a Roy Grace series, right?
Yeah, the Roy Grace series, the first in the series was called Dead Simple. And it's my publisher's reissuing it as a trade paperback in October at £9.99.
In the States?
In the States, yeah. So called Dead Simple. And that's a novel that people love it. It began with a wedding night prank. This guy, he's always played bad tricks on his friends, and his mates decide they're going to bury him alive for 2 hours in a coffin in remote woods. Then they're going to come back and dig him up. They're going to go off drinking. And they bury him alive, they put the lid on, put him in the grave, cover it up, go off in the truck, and they all get killed in an accident.
Oh.
And that's the end of chapter 1.
Okay. Well, you keep on reading to see what finds. Okay, what happened? You live in the UK. How different is this crime scene, thriller scene over there in Europe? And I mean, the UK is not even Europe, but with European counterparts, and then in the States, because you go back and forth between the two. Like you and Lich are pretty much the biggest name in the crime, right?
Yeah. I mean, Ian Rankin too in England is massive. But I think that the big...
Oh, Ian Rankin, that's right, yeah. But he's Scottish, right?
That's true, yeah, he doesn't count.
We're talking about Brits.
But I think the very big difference between traditionally English crime and traditionally American crime is that the English crime writing, and I don't fit into this mold, but the traditional English crime writer is very much in the mold of Agatha Christie. You know, her books will begin with a dead body in chapter 1, often in the library of a country house.
That's right.
And the rest of the book is a puzzle to solve it.
That's right.
In American crime thrillers, the victim is still alive at the end of chapter 1. It's much more, I find American thrillers much more exciting to read. You know, writers like Michael Connelly, early James Patterson I loved. And that's what I try to write. I love that genre. I've always loved the American crime writers. I've looked to them right from when I was in my teens, Ed McBain.
Sure, yeah.
Who I loved. I loved the Travis McGee and the John D. McDonald books just because he was so quirky. Joseph Wamba. I think that the American tradition of thriller and crime thriller writing is to me is infinitely more exciting than the British tradition.
Yeah. So when you have a main character like Roy for all these years, and then you are also, everyone's getting older as you write so many books, how is he aging? How is he coping with that process?
I've played a kind of trick with time in the book. So I'm now writing the 11th Roy Grace. And when we meet him in Dead Simple, in the first one, he is just coming up to his 39th birthday.
Yeah.
And you learn that his wife, Sandy, who he loved and adored, had vanished 9 years ago on his 30th birthday. And he's still not found her. He doesn't know what happened to her. And it's ongoing part of the stories. And in the 11th book, he's just had his 40th birthday.
40?
Yeah, 40. So the whole time span of the 11 books is about a year and a half. So he's only gone from 39 to 40. Because what I didn't want to do was age him a year in each book. Yeah. Because then he's going to hit retirement age.
But you, the writer, have lived those real years, right?
Yeah.
Your psyche has changed, and we are fluid as people. You perceive life differently, so it must have been impacted somehow, no?
Oh, it has impacted quite. I mean, I guess it's impacted. Roy is maturing in the sense that for years he didn't have a new love in his life because he wondered if Sandy was going to turn up again or not. Now he's fallen in love, and he's now had a baby, gets married in Bhutan, and he's moving forward with his life. And I think as a writer...
All this in 1 year.
Year and a half. The seeds of it were there when I started.
I want that life. 11 years becomes a year and a half.
But I've moved the book forwards culturally. So each book, I reflect the events that are going on in the world in each book. So each book feels like it's written in the current year. Okay. I think authors can take a certain amount of license.
So how many more do you think you can write about?
I'm really loving writing them. I love the research. I've got friends here in the NYPD. I've set several scenes in some of my books over here in New York, going out with the police here. I find their world fascinating. I would hope I'm going to write at least another 11. You know.
So how you start? You have an idea for a story. You take an idea from the newspaper cuttings, and then you send an email to your friends' network of friends. Is how it works, pretty much, or for your research?
It very much varies. With Deadmans Time, I'd always wanted to write a story about revenge. Revenge fascinates me because it's such a big driver for crime. And in Deadmans Time, this novel starts in Brooklyn in 1920, and it's the guy whose father is a high-up member of the White Hand Gang, the Irish mafia in the 1920s, and he's given this beautiful Patek Philippe watch, pocket watch, and the story picks up years. This is when he's a 6-year-old kid. The story picks up in Brighton in 2012 when he's 95 years old. He's a multimillionaire, and his sister has the watch, and it's stolen from a house in a horrible burglary in which she dies. And all he cares about is finding who did that, getting that watch back, and avenging his sister's death.
What's the watch represents for him? Because it's only an object at the end of the day. Yeah, it's got to stand for something else.
His father when he was a child, his father would come into his bedroom, and he loved the watch because it had a man in the moon in it. And he'd ask his dad every night to tell him a story about the man in the moon, and his dad would always do that. And when the book begins, the dad is telling him the story, goes to bed, and then he hears noises, he hears shots. And basically his mother is shot dead, and his father is dragged away into the night and never seen again. It's a revenge killing. And his aunt, they're Irish-American family, his aunt takes him and his sister to Dublin to really get them away from the horrors of New York in 1920. Okay. And then ultimately they end up in Brighton, and he goes into the antiques trade, and the whole thing kind of connects.
Okay, connects. Well, wish you all the best of the book. I guess was Peter James and Deadmans Time. So the clock is right here. I don't see the moon guy, but I'm sure he's somewhere in there hiding. And all the best to you, and thank you for being on Books du Jour.
It's great to be back. Thank you.